My sister stole my fiancé because she said he had potential, and smiled in every family photo Reddit stories. The betrayal didn't come with screaming or chaos, just pastel dresses and quiet lies that spread for months. By the time the truth surfaced, my entire life had already been rewritten without my consent. Hi, I'm Lila, 38, and my sister stole my fiancé because, in her words, he had potential. Not charm. Not love. Not compatibility. Potential. Like he was a winning lottery ticket she snatched out of my hands. People think betrayals come with lightning and screaming and someone flipping a table. Mine arrived dressed in pastel colors, smiling politely in family photos. Back then, my life looked deceptively stable. Marketing manager at a mid-sized coastal company, an apartment I could barely afford but adored, and a fiancé who looked good in pictures and never forgot to say the right lines in front of my parents. He wore sincerity like a tailored suit, and I was naive enough to believe it was real. My mother practically staged a parade when I announced we were engaged. She clapped like she had personally manifested him into existence. "It all finally makes sense now," she said, because apparently my value crystallized the moment a man put a ring on my finger. Enter my sister, Mira. 2 years younger. Lifetime competitor. Someone who could make a church funeral feel like a beauty pageant if she thought someone might be judging. The night she met my fiancé, she walked into my parents' living room like the star of her own movie. Hugged him too long. Laughed too loudly. Touched his arm the way she always did when she wanted a man to remember her long after she left the room. But I told myself not to spiral. We were adults. This was not high school. Surely we were past all that. Spoiler, we were very much not past all that. When he proposed 16 months later, private dining room, view of the water, ring big enough to double as a self-defense weapon, my mother cried, my father approved, and Mira looked at the ring like she was evaluating the asset value of a house she planned to flip someday. I still asked her to be my maid of honor. I know. In hindsight, I basically handed her the blueprints for the life she wanted and said, "Here, feel free to study these." If only I'd known how literally she'd take that. The first cracks didn't look like cracks. They looked like work emergencies, sudden late nights, client meetings he couldn't name, weekend strategy sessions that somehow never showed up on his calendar. At the same time, Mira, my newly appointed maid of honor, became deeply, passionately invested in helping us plan the wedding. She came to every appointment, every tasting, every dress fitting. She hovered. She inserted herself. She corrected me. My mother thought it was adorable. My father said it was nice to see the girls finally getting along. Meanwhile, I was losing weight without trying, waking up at 3 a.m. with my heart pounding, and wondering why my fiancé suddenly spoke to me like I was a teenager who couldn't be trusted with anything sharp. Then came the perfume. I leaned across his dining table one night, handing him a folder, and I caught a floral scent on his shirt. I don't wear floral. Never have. It wasn't subtle either. It was mirror-level floral. He froze for half a second, then launched into the story. Hugged an investor earlier. She was enthusiastic. A reasonable explanation. So why did it feel like he practiced the line in the mirror? I told myself to stop being paranoid. Couples go through stressful periods. Wedding planning is a nightmare. People hug investors. Then came the earring. A week later, I found it in his car, small, silver, unmistakably Myra's. I had bought it for her birthday 2 years earlier. I held it up. "Whose is this?" His answer came fast. "Myra's. I gave her a ride last week. Car trouble, remember?" I didn't remember. But the next day, when I casually asked her about it, she parroted the exact same story with the exact same phrasing. It should have been enough. But I was deep in that stage where you cling to denial like a life raft. Then came the night at my parents' house. He was supposed to be asleep beside me. At 3 a.m., I rolled over and found empty sheets. Voices murmured down the hall. I followed them. The guest room door was cracked open. Light. Shadows. My fiancé sitting too close. Mira leaning in. His hand brushing her knee. Her hand on his shoulder. They jerked apart like teenagers caught after curfew. We were just talking, Mira said. I said nothing. Just closed the door. Walked back to my room. Locked it. I didn't sleep again. The next morning, I convinced myself I had exaggerated everything. That they weren't that close. That I imagined the almost touching. That exhaustion was making me paranoid. Denial is a hell of a drug. But the truth doesn't stay quiet forever. The day everything truly detonated was a Tuesday. I decided to surprise my fiancé with lunch, some misguided attempt to reconnect, to prove we were still us despite the tension gnawing at my ribs. His assistant looked like she'd swallowed a stapler when she saw me. Oh. He's in a very important meeting. Maybe don't wait. That alone should have told me everything. But no, I stayed. And then she left her desk. His office door was cracked open, just slightly, the universe's cruel sense of humor. I heard a laugh. Her laugh. Myra's. My skin went numb. I pushed the door open with the hand holding his favorite sandwich. And there it was. My fiancée standing between her knees as she sat on his desk. Her arms wrapped around his neck. His hands on her waist. Their mouths connected like they'd been doing it forever. Not an almost. Not a misunderstanding. Not a we tripped. A kiss. A deliberate, practiced kiss. For a moment, none of us moved. Even the air froze. Then Mira pulled back and wiped her mouth with her thumb like she was bored. Well, she said. You were going to find out. He stepped forward with the gall to say. Kendra, it's not what you think. I laughed. Actually laughed. A sound that cracked in the middle because it was holding too much pain. Really? I said. Walk me through the alternative explanation. Please. This should be good. Mira rolled her eyes. We've been seeing each other for months. It just happened. 5, he added quietly. 5 months. 5 months of my sister wearing my dresses at fittings. 5 months of him kissing me while texting her under the table. 5 months of them rehearsing stories about perfume and earrings. I didn't scream. I didn't cry. My voice came out steadier than my bones felt. I'm done. With both of you. Don't call me. Don't come near me. Then I walked out, just walked, holding the bag of sandwiches like the last pathetic souvenir of a life I didn't realize had already ended. I made it to my car before I collapsed, shaking so hard I could barely breathe. The bag split open. The sauce bled across the pavement. And I sat there, staring at it, thinking, this is my life. This stupid stain. Everything broken and leaking. And for the first time, I felt something colder than heartbreak. Humiliation. My parents found me on the bathroom floor. Not dramatic metaphorical floor, literally the tile, soaked, shivering, still wearing the clothes I'd walked into the shower in. Mascara smeared. Eyes swollen. Body hollow. They used their spare key after I wouldn't answer my phone. My mother screamed. My father actually staggered back like someone had punched him. I remember them wrapping me in towels. I remember my mother's hands shaking as she kept saying, No, 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 this can't be right. Because denial is apparently a family heirloom. I told them everything. The office. The kiss. The timeline. My father's face turned a furious shade I'd never seen before. My mother kept whispering, Your sister wouldn't, she wouldn't. But she would. And she did. They spent the next 48 hours canceling the wedding while I drifted through the apartment like a ghost. The ring went back in a box with a note that said only, We're done. I didn't even walk it in myself. Just dropped it with the doorman like trash pickup. Calls from him flooded in. I deleted every voicemail without listening. He texted long, frantic messages, apologies, explanations, emotional ransom notes. Gone. Mira didn't call. Of course she didn't. She posted a vague quote online instead about following your heart even when others don't understand. People commented glittery hearts. Someone wrote, "So proud of you for choosing love." Love. The delusion was impressive. Then came the second wave. The friends, who suddenly remembered they'd seen chemistry between them all along. One acquaintance wrinkled her nose and said, "Honestly, they always had such strong energy together." Strong energy? They were siblings-in-law in training, not cast members on a reality show. But the betrayal wasn't just theirs. It was everyone who noticed the storm clouds and decided to watch from their porch. Work became unbearable. I cried in bathroom stalls between meetings. I stopped eating. Stopped sleeping. Stopped functioning. One night, after my boss gently suggested medical leave, I opened the relocation listings at our company's different branches. Anywhere. Anywhere that wasn't here. When the offer came, a leadership role in a branch far inland, quiet, anonymous, new, I took it. Packed my apartment. Deleted every trace of them from my phone. Moved to a city where no one knew my story. I told myself this was the reboot. The clean slate. The part of the movie where the sad girl reinvents herself. Except grief came with me. It found me in grocery stores, in traffic lights, in the smell of floral perfume on strangers. It found me in the fact that every choice I made felt like it was still happening in the shadow of them. But then, slowly, life started rearranging itself. Work gave me purpose again. A colleague in HR dragged me to book club. I made friends. Real ones. And then, at a conference, I sat next to a man who didn't perform his personality. He just existed. Calm. Steady. Warm. He listened when I talked. Actually listened. We started emailing about work, then life, then everything in between. Months later, he asked me to dinner. I said yes. And that first night, when I had a panic attack so violent I couldn't hold my glass, he didn't flinch. He didn't panic. He didn't say I was overreacting. He guided my breathing until I could speak again. And when I finally told him the whole story, the office, the 5 months, the implosion, he didn't look at me with pity or judgment. He just said quietly, "I know what it's like when the person you trust most chooses someone else." He had been there too. Two broken people, recognizing the same fracture line. Healing didn't arrive all at once. It came in microscopic moments. A morning when coffee didn't taste bitter. An afternoon when I laughed without immediately feeling guilty. A walk home from work when I realized I hadn't thought about them all day. And meanwhile, things with him, Evan, grew slowly but steadily. No fireworks. No grand gestures. Just a man who showed up consistently, who understood panic without needing it explained, who never made me feel like my trauma was an inconvenience he had to tiptoe around. One night, after months of dating, I finally asked the quiet question that had been clawing at me. "How do you know you won't disappear one day?" He didn't laugh. Didn't roll his eyes. Didn't say, "Come on, I'm not that guy." He just answered plainly, "You don't. But I do. And that has to be enough until you believe it too." And somehow it was. But life, being life, didn't care about my progress. Around the time we started talking about moving in together, I learned something I wasn't prepared for. His big career break, the major contract that had catapulted him forward, was the same account my ex had lost years before. They had been rivals on it. Evan won. He kept it from me because he didn't want our relationship to feel like karmic revenge. But when he finally told me, it felt like someone had pulled the floor out from under us again. Not because he'd done anything wrong, but because I'd built my life around avoiding shadows of the past. We fought. Quietly. Deeply. The kind of argument where you're both scared, not angry. We went to counseling. We learned to say uncomfortable truths without dressing them in politeness. And we kept going. Then came my mother's diagnosis. Pancreatic cancer? Stage nobody wants to speak out loud. I flew home. Evan came with me. My mother shrank before my eyes, faded, softened, disappeared piece by piece while my father aged 10 years in a month. On one of her clearer days, she squeezed my hand and whispered, "I should have protected you both from each other." I didn't know what to say. There was no fixing anything now. 3 days later, she was gone. The funeral was a storm of casseroles, whispered gossip, and people pretending to comfort us while scanning the room for drama. My sister and my ex arrived together, married now, dressed like a matching set. Seeing them felt like being punched underwater. Then Evan walked in. And the room changed. Because suddenly my ex recognized him. And Mira recognized that recognition. "Oh," she said softly. "You're that Evan. The one who beat her husband. The one who became everything he wasn't. The one she never saw coming." The look on her face was the closest thing to silence I'd ever seen from her. But grief swallowed the moment. My father had a panic attack. People cried. Rain fell. Life didn't pause for poetic justice. After the funeral crowd thinned and the casseroles coagulated on the counter, Mira asked to talk privately. Of course she did. She pulled me into my childhood bedroom, the room where we'd fought over clothes, over attention, over space, over everything. She closed the door and leaned against it like she needed support just to stay upright. "I'm not happy," she said. No apology. No acknowledgement. Just a confession wrapped in self-pity. She went on. "He criticizes everything I do. Watches my spending. Controls who I talk to. We're drowning financially. He wants everyone to think we're perfect, but we're not even close." I sat on the edge of the bed, the same bed I'd cried in after discovering her and my fiancé, and stared at her without blinking. She kept talking, like she'd been waiting years for someone to unload this onto. "I met with a lawyer. The prenup is ironclad. If I leave, I get almost nothing." Her voice cracked. She looked at me like she wanted me to rescue her. "Are you happy?" she asked. Not in a hopeful way. In a jealous one. As if my happiness had stolen hers. I let the silence stretch until it got uncomfortable. Then I answered, "Yes, I am." She flinched. I continued, my voice steady. "And let me be very clear. I'm not happy because you lost everything. I'm happy because I rebuilt something after you tried to destroy me." Her mouth opened, but I raised a hand. "You don't get my forgiveness. You don't get my sympathy. Not now. Not ever." Tears started rolling down her cheeks, the same theatrical sobs she'd perfected as a child. I didn't move. Didn't comfort. Didn't soften. "You chose this," I said. "You chose him. You chose ambition over family. You burned the bridge and then realized you're stuck on the wrong side." Her voice broke. "Are you ever going to talk to me again?" "No. No explanation. No cushioning. Just the truth. I was done with you the moment I saw you on his desk," I said. "I just didn't admit it until now." I stood. "Open the door. You should leave before this gets uglier." She sobbed harder. But she left. When the door clicked shut, the air felt lighter. My father found me a few minutes later and asked cautiously, "Did you two fix anything?" "No," I said. "We didn't." He looked heartbroken. But not surprised. The next days were logistics, death paperwork, estate details, casseroles fermenting in the fridge. Then I flew home to my quiet little house in the middle of the country, where Evan greeted me at the door, wrapped me in his arms, and said nothing, because nothing was the right thing to say. Grief settled into the corners of the house. But something else did, too. Relief. Because for the first time in my life, I had closed a chapter without leaving a bookmark in it. Life didn't get easier, it just got clearer. A month after the funeral, something unexpected happened. I missed a period. I blamed stress. I blamed travel. I blamed the universe for having terrible timing. But when I missed the next one, I bought a test. 2 blue lines appeared so fast it felt like the test had been waiting to yell at me. I sat on the floor and laughed. Then cried. Then laughed again. My body, after years of unpredictability and whispered warnings from doctors, had decided now was the moment to cooperate. When I told Evan, he froze for half a heartbeat, then he pulled me into his arms and just held me. No theatrics. No panic. No performative excitement. Just pure, quiet joy. I told my father next. He cried in a way that made my throat close. I did not tell Mira. She didn't earn that news. A few weeks later, my father accidentally let it slip during a phone call with her. Her message arrived that afternoon. Congratulations. I'm happy for you. I stared at it. Felt nothing. Deleted it. Not blocked. Not replied. Just deleted. Indifference is colder than hate, and far more permanent. Meanwhile, her life unraveled loudly enough that bits of it floated back to me through my father. She finally left her husband. The marriage self-destructed in fire and debt and mutual resentment. She lost the house. Lost most of the money. Lost the friends who had applauded her brave choice to steal my fiancé. She moved into a small apartment. The kind of place she used to mock me for living in. She picked up a regular job with a regular schedule and a regular paycheck. Her messages appeared every few months. Can we talk? I miss you. I want to fix things. Please. I never responded. Because here's the truth no one likes to say out loud. Some relationships don't break. They rot. And once rot spreads through the foundation, you don't rebuild, you walk away. My therapist called it boundary detachment. I called it peace. Evan and I built a home that felt nothing like the world I came from. There was no competition. No performance. No hidden agendas. Just 2 people trying their best, failing sometimes, apologizing sincerely, and trying again. The baby grew. My belly grew. My life expanded in ways I hadn't dared imagine. Some nights, I still woke up sweating from dreams of walking into that office with a bag of sandwiches. But the dreams faded faster now. They didn't own me the way they used to. Then, one quiet evening, after dinner, after a long day at work, after folding impossibly tiny baby clothes, Evan asked, "Do you ever think about her?" I thought about it. Then shook my head. No. Not really. She doesn't live in the part of my mind that matters anymore. He smiled and kissed my forehead. And for the first time in what felt like years, the past stayed in the past. Tomorrow was ours. The closer I got to my due date, the more the past tried to claw its way back in subtle little ways. A message here. A friend request there. A long paragraph from a number I didn't have saved but knew instantly belonged to Mira. I ignored it all. Silence, I've learned, is a language. And mine was saying, "You are not welcome here." Still, as my stomach grew and the baby kicked like they were training for a soccer league, a small anxious part of me kept imagining one scenario. My sister showing up at the hospital. I mentioned it to Evan once, casually, while we were assembling the crib. "What if she comes?" I asked, tightening a screw that didn't need tightening. He didn't look up. "She won't get anywhere near you," he said. "Or our child. I promise you that." The certainty in his voice made something tight in my chest loosen. But I didn't know yet how fiercely he meant those words. The birth. Labor hit at 3:47 a.m. because babies love drama. Evan drove like the world was ending. One hand on the wheel, the other holding mine, telling me to breathe, telling me he loved me, telling me we were almost there. Hours passed. The kind of hours that blur into a haze of pain and adrenaline and 2 bright lights. But then there was a cry. A tiny, furious, beautiful cry that ripped my heart open in the best possible way. They placed my daughter on my chest, warm and trembling and perfect. I sobbed. Evan sobbed. A nurse cried out of sympathy because apparently we were contagious. My dad arrived later with flowers and trembling hands. He held his granddaughter like she was made of glass. "She has your mother's nose," he whispered. I held his arm. "I know." He stayed only an hour. Grief has made him softer, quieter, easier to break. When he left, Evan kissed my forehead and said, "Let's just enjoy this bubble. No outside world unless you want it." I wanted that more than anything. But the outside world had other plans. The attempt. The next morning, a nurse knocked gently on the door. "There's someone here asking for you," she said. My stomach dropped. "Describe her," I said. The nurse hesitated. "Red coat. Dark hair. About your height." "She said she's family?" My heartbeat turned to thunder. Evan stood up so fast his chair scraped the floor. "Where is she?" he asked, voice low and dangerous. The nurse blinked. "By the waiting area?" She asked if she could come in. "No," Evan said. "Absolutely not." He walked out before I could say a word. I heard the door swing shut. He didn't raise his voice, but the tension in the hall was sharp enough to hear even through the walls. 10 minutes later, he came back. His jaw tight. His hands still curled into fists. "She's gone," he said simply. "What did you say to her?" I whispered. He sat on the edge of the bed, took my hand, and met my eyes with that steady, grounding gaze that had pulled me through panic attacks and dark nights. "I told her," he said slowly, "that she had two choices. She could leave now, quietly, with whatever dignity she still had, or I could have security escort her out in front of a dozen families. Either way, she wasn't getting within 100 feet of you or our daughter." My breath shook. "And she left?" "She tried to say she just wanted to congratulate you." He scoffed. "I told her she forfeited that right the day she gutted your life." I closed my eyes, absorbing the weight of it. The quiet justice. The boundary enforced by someone who actually loved me. The balance finally tipping where it belonged. "Thank you," I whispered. He brushed my hair back. "You never have to thank me for protecting you," he said. "That's my job. And my honor." Something inside me settled, a final piece clicking into place. I realized then that my daughter would grow up watching a man love her mother consistently, kindly, fiercely. Not perfectly, but safely. And that alone meant everything. Later that night, when the room was dark and the machines hummed softly, Evan whispered, "Do you regret shutting her out?" I looked at our daughter sleeping between us, tiny hand curled around my finger. "No," I said. "I regret ever letting her close in the first place." He nodded, kissed my temple, and whispered, "Good. Then let's close that door for good." And for the first time in years, I realized the past wasn't chasing me anymore. It was behind me. Far behind me. Exactly where it belonged. I didn't hear from my sister again for almost 3 months. Not a message. Not a request. Not an apology. Silence. It was almost eerie at first, like the calm after a tornado when you're waiting to see if the sky will split open again. But it didn't. It stayed quiet. And in that quiet, life began to take shape in ways I didn't expect. The first weeks. Newborn days are chaos wrapped in softness. Sleepless nights. Warm bottles. Evan swaying in the hallway at 3 a.m., singing badly on purpose just to make me laugh through exhaustion. My daughter learned to grip my shirt with surprising strength. She learned my smell. She learned the sound of Evan's heartbeat when she fell asleep on his chest. Every time I looked at her, something in my chest expanded and ached. A kind of love I didn't know I had room for. My father visited every Sunday with groceries and stories he practiced to distract me from the grief that still hung between us. He never mentioned my sister. Not even once. That silence was the first sign that he was starting to understand too. The news I didn't ask for. It was a Thursday morning, early, when my father's voice cracked over the phone. "I didn't want to tell you," he said. But I thought, maybe you should know. Those words never mean anything good. I sat on the couch, baby asleep on my chest, listening to him breathe shakily through the receiver. Your sister filed for bankruptcy, he said quietly. And she moved back to the city. She's living in a small studio. Alone. I didn't say anything. I didn't feel satisfaction. I didn't feel pity. Just a distant, cold sort of logic. Actions have consequences. She asked if I could reach out to you, he added reluctantly. My stomach clenched. And you didn't, I said. I told her, he said after a long pause, that I won't be the bridge anymore. You get to choose who's in your life. Not me. For the first time in a long time, I felt a flicker of something toward my father that I hadn't felt since childhood. Respect. Thank you, I whispered. The letter. 2 weeks later, a plain envelope appeared in my mailbox. No return address. No decoration. Just my name, written in handwriting I hadn't seen since high school. I almost threw it away. Instead, I opened it on the porch while the baby slept inside and the sunlight warmed my shoulders. It wasn't an apology. It wasn't even close. It was 3 pages of, I was hurting. You always had things easier. I wasn't myself. You have everything now. I just want my sister back. I read the whole thing once. Then again. Then I folded it neatly and slid it into the trash. Not ripped. Not burned. Not shredded. Just discarded. A symbolic burial. I didn't tell Evan. I didn't tell my father. I didn't tell anyone. Some things don't need an audience. A small moment that meant everything. A week later, Evan came home early with takeout from my favorite place. He set it on the counter, walked over to me, and asked, You okay? Yes, I said automatically. He lifted my chin gently. Try again. And I did. I got a letter, I whispered. He went still. From her? I nodded. Do you want to talk about it? He asked. No, I said. I want to eat dinner with my husband and hold my daughter and pretend the past is just a book I read once and forgot most of. He smiled, soft and warm. That, he said, I can absolutely do. Later that night, as I rocked my daughter to sleep, her small breasts brushing against my collarbone, a thought settled in my mind with surprising clarity. Forgiveness isn't the prize. Peace is. And I finally had it. About 6 months after the letter, the one I threw away without ceremony, I ran into someone I hadn't thought about in ages. Not my sister. Not my ex worse. A woman who had been at the center of my old social circle. Polished. Well-connected. Exactly the type who lives for drama as long as she isn't the one bleeding from it. She spotted me in a grocery store aisle, baby strapped to my chest, hair in a messy bun that wasn't even trying to be aesthetic. Oh my God! She gasped. I haven't seen you since. Everything. Everything. The polite word people use when they mean betrayal, humiliation, psychological implosion, and losing a wedding in a single afternoon. I gave her a nod. Hey. She leaned in like she was about to deliver the juiciest gossip in America. So, she said slowly, drawing out the syllable, are you ever going to talk to your sister again? People were saying. Which people? I asked. Her smile twitched. Just, everyone. There it was. The assumption that tragedy makes you forgivable. That time makes you soft. That motherhood makes you sentimental. I didn't bother pretending. No, I said calmly. We're done. She blinked, surprised. Maybe disappointed. Oh. I just thought, with the baby. Having a child doesn't make me forget who hurt me, I said, adjusting the strap on my baby carrier. It just makes me more careful about who I let near us. Her cheeks flushed. She mumbled something like, of course, and excused herself to the next aisle as if the cereal boxes needed her attention. I walked away feeling lighter. Some truths sound harsh only to people who have never had to rebuild themselves. That night, I told Evan the story as he dried dishes. She really said that? He asked, eyebrows raised. Oh yeah? Full gossip posture. He shook his head. I'm proud of you, you know. For shutting down a rumor ambassador? For protecting your peace, he said. For choosing your life instead of trying to salvage something that never deserved you. I leaned on the counter. You think I'm doing the right thing? I think, he said, stepping closer, you finally stopped bleeding for people who sharpened the knives. My throat tightened, not with sadness, but with recognition. He was right. A tiny, unexpected gift. Later, after the baby was asleep and the house had settled into its nighttime hum, I checked the mailbox. Inside was a package addressed to me. No return label. I froze for a second. But when I opened it, the box inside had a logo I recognized immediately. My mother's favorite jeweler. Inside was a delicate bracelet, gold, small, understated, the kind of thing she would have chosen for me if she were still here. And with it, a tiny handwritten card from my father. She bought this years ago. Said it was for when she figures herself out. I think now is right. I sat on the porch steps in the warm night air, the bracelet shining in my hand, and cried quietly into the dark. Not from grief. From gratitude. For him. For the life I had now. For the woman I was finally becoming. And then, something I didn't expect. That same night, long after I'd put the bracelet on, my phone buzzed. A single message. From an unknown number. I heard you had a daughter. I hope she's healthy. I won't reach out again. Please just take care of her. My sister. It wasn't an apology. It wasn't forgiveness seeking. It wasn't manipulative. It was small. Uneven. Raw. And for the first time in years, it sounded honest. I didn't reply. But I didn't delete it either. Some endings don't slam the door. Some just let the wind carry it closed. 3 months after my sister's last message, the one I didn't answer but also didn't erase, my father called with a tone I hadn't heard before. Tired. Not sad. Not worried. Just tired in a way that lives in the bones. Can you come for the weekend? He asked. I felt my stomach tighten. Is something wrong? No, he said. I think I need my family around me. Family used to be a complicated word for me. Now it meant my husband, my daughter, and the parent who stayed on my side when the world split open. So we packed bags, loaded the car, and drove back to the coastal city I'd once planned my entire life around. Walking back into the house that raised me. Nothing had changed. The same framed photos. The same creaking floorboard near the hallway. The same smell of old books and lemon polish. But grief had changed the energy. It hummed in the corners like dust that no one dared disturb. My daughter babbled as my father held her, his face softening in a way I hadn't seen in years. You're good for him, Evan whispered, placing a hand on my back. For the first time in a long time, I believed it. The knock on the door. It happened on Saturday afternoon. A soft, hesitant knocking. Not the confident knuckles of a neighbor. Not the sharp rhythm of a delivery driver. My father and I both froze. He inhaled. I exhaled. He opened the door. And there she was. My sister. Smaller than I remembered. Thinner. Worn in a way expensive serums and curated selfies could no longer hide. She wasn't wearing jewelry. She wasn't wearing confidence. She was just human. Hi, Dad, she said quietly. Then her eyes drifted to me. Hi, Kendra. My father looked between us with the hopeful expression of a man who still, despite everything, believed his children might someday occupy the same room without a storm forming. Come in, he said. My chest tightened. I wanted to grab my daughter. I wanted to run upstairs. I wanted to slam the door on the past. But I stayed still. Because running wouldn't undo anything. Her speech. She didn't sit. She didn't take off her coat. She just stood in the doorway, hands shaking. I'm not here to ask anything, she said quickly. I know I don't have that right. Her voice cracked. I just wanted to tell you. I'm leaving the city. I got a job offer 2 states away. It's not glamorous. It's not even well paid. But it's mine. And I think I need to start over somewhere you aren't. I didn't speak. She swallowed hard. I know I blew up your life. I know I don't deserve your forgiveness. I'm not here to ask for it. A pause. I just didn't want to disappear without saying that I'm sorry. Truly sorry. My throat tightened, but not with sympathy. With something older. Something quieter. A grieving of the sister I'd never actually had. She finished with, I hope, maybe in another lifetime, we could have gotten this right. My response. I stepped forward until I stood a few feet away. Close enough to look her in the eyes. Far enough that history couldn't reach me. This lifetime, I said softly, is the only one I'm responsible for. She nodded, tears spilling over. I know. And in this lifetime, I continued, I'm choosing peace. Which means letting go. Completely. Her face crumpled just slightly. Not dramatically. Not manipulatively. Just honestly. I understand, she whispered. And for the first time, I believed she did. The final goodbye. She turned to leave. Paused. Looked back at my daughter in my father's arms. She's beautiful, my sister said. Please, raise her in a world where sisters don't end up like us. Then she walked away. Her footsteps down the driveway were soft, almost apologetic. The door closed behind her with a gentle click. No slam. No fight. No chaos. Just an ending. A clean one, finally. My sister left that day without another word, and something in the air shifted when the door clicked shut. Not relief. Not triumph. Something quieter. Like a knot inside me had finally stopped tightening. My father stood there a long moment, holding my daughter against his chest, staring at the empty doorway as if trying to memorize the outline of someone slipping out of his life for the second time. You did the right thing, he whispered, not to me, not to her, but to the room. Maybe to himself. That night, after the house went quiet and my daughter finally slept in the portable crib we'd set up in my old bedroom, I stepped outside onto the back porch. The air smelled like salt and warm wood, the same way it had when I was a teenager dreaming of anywhere else. Evan joined me, slipping his hand into mine. You okay? He asked. I thought about it. About the years I lost to a man who mocked my instincts. About a sister who had turned marriage into a competition and then into a weapon. About the hollowed-out months afterward, when I didn't know how to be a person outside the wreckage. About the move, the promotion, the panic attacks, the second chance at love I almost didn't let myself have. And about today. The moment my sister finally said sorry. And the moment I finally realized I didn't need the apology to move on. I'm okay, I said. And for once, it was true. When we drove home the next morning, my daughter babbling in the back seat, sun streaming across the dashboard, I realized something else. Forgiveness wasn't the finish line. Distance was. Peace wasn't a gift someone handed me. It was a boundary I built with my own 2 hands. My sister moved 2 states away. She kept her promise and never reached out again. My father sends occasional updates, small, factual things, but I never ask for more. My life is full enough. A year later, on my daughter's first birthday, I caught myself watching her clap at the cake, cheeks smeared with frosting, eyes bright and trusting. And I made a quiet vow. She will grow up in a house without competition. Without cruelty disguised as love. Without a sister who must be beaten in order to feel worthy. She will grow up knowing that family is not defined by blood, but by safety, by loyalty, by gentleness, by choice. My sister once believed she had stolen my future. But this life with a man who loves me without performing. A father who finally understands boundaries. A daughter who will never see me break the way I once did. This life is one she could never have built. Not because I deserved it more, but because I learned to stop fighting for people who sharpened their knives on my hope. She took the man who would have ruined me. She freed me from a marriage that would have killed my spirit slowly, quietly, politely. And in the end? She didn't steal anything. I walked away. I rebuilt my life. And she's living in the distance where she belongs. A ghost from a chapter I've finally closed. If she ever reads this, if she ever wonders, here is the truth. I don't hate you. I don't love you. I don't think about you. And that silence, that emptiness, that freedom, is the ending I choose.